I personally will look to see where I'm pulling out my label maker and I'm slapping a label on someone. And I'll think, why am I doing that? And what's really funny to me is most times I'm doing that because something in them I recognize in me. Mm-hmm. Welcome to Living God's Light, a podcast to help you strengthen your spirituality and your connection with God. We are so happy to have you as a part of the Living God's Light family.
Welcome to the Living God's Light podcast. I'm Alan Smith.
I'm Vincent Tolman.
I'm Lynn Taylor.
I'm Lindsay Young.
And today we are going to be talking about releasing all prejudice.
Easy.
Sure. Yeah. So easy. Yeah, I don't think so.
Well, so when we were working on the book, The Light After Death, and we had some test readers making sure that it all flowed well, and more often than not, that is a chapter in the book people would stop at. They get stuck.
Okay.
It got to the point where I would say, so how's the book coming? Any thoughts, any feedback? They go, well, I haven't read it in about a week or two. And I go, did you get to the chapter on prejudice? Like, yeah, that's actually where I stopped. I'm like, And almost every time it was because they were confronted with the reality. Many times I thought I was the most non-prejudiced person in the world, and now I realize I'm seeing my prejudices all the time. We've all got them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the word itself has such a negative connotation, and which is understandable, because there is some ugly forms of prejudice.
Absolutely.
Really, that we don't want to associate with. But the word itself, and there's not really a better word to describe it, it just means that you have a prejudgment on somebody for some reason.
Maybe a personal bias.
Yeah. And there's natural reasons why we do it. There's this thing called heuristics where we take a very complex problem, we simplify it down to make it easier to manage. And that's really what we're doing in many cases. But then when we really start to dig into that, we realize that through our experiences and through our culture, society, we've had some of these things baked into us that we don't even realize. And it takes work to overcome those. And I think one of the key beginnings of that is to not have that judgment and bias against ourselves. Don't judge ourselves for what we've been programmed to. Release that and start working on seeing things in a new way.
I love that saying, seeing things in a new way. That's a big thing that I talk about in my classes that I teach, and in the other things that people that I interact with, is seeing your life differently, seeing outside the stories that we've created our whole life around who we are and who we expect to be, or what other people have said about us, because I think that creates part of that bias or that prejudice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I feel like, in my experience, the prejudice and forgiveness somewhat have a parallel. Just as far as going through experiences in your own life and creating ideas or prejudice against certain groups who may have wronged you, who may have, made you feel a certain way, and you put a label on them that these people are this kind of people and I don't want to associate with them. And how I've kind of transformed that is recognizing, that everyone's journey is their own journey. Mm-hmm. I know nothing about yours. Well, maybe, but just kidding. No, but just that recognizing that everyone's journey is different, but really that, I wasn't in their shoes when they developed whatever thought, behavior, or action that I felt was wrong, based off of their childhood experiences, their own things that I may know nothing about. I'm holding a prejudice against them. What if that was the only tool they were given? What if, God orchestrated it so that I would come to that realization? Like, that's the point of it. There's just so many variables, I feel like, and really recognizing that you can label someone as something based off of a projection of your own trauma and hurt.
I think something that you said just stuck in my head, and it was something about God. And, we are the Living God's Light podcast, and I'm sitting here thinking about God loves us all. He loves us each individually for who we are, not about whatever we've done in our life or where we were born or what country we're from or what culture we're from. He loves us all individually and knows us in the same way. So can we see it from his perspective? Is there a way to get to that point in our lives where we see things from God's perspective and everyone has value? Everyone has the right to be themselves. Everyone needs that grace and that love in their life from us.
To me, I like to utilize an exercise that I've learned works really well for me, is as I run into prejudice, as I run into any type of prejudice behavior, I visualize the person that's prejudiced as a little toddler doing the same thing. And the way that we kind of blanket grace children, it's a lot easier to realize that, you know what, we know they're in the wrong, we know that they're not in the right, but we can also understand that it's ignorance that causes them to do that.
Right.
People don't come into prejudice out of comfort or security or stability. They do it out of weakness and insecurity. In fact, the most insecure people in the world are the most prejudiced. And that's statistically proven in psychology. So, really an understanding for us to work out our own prejudices is I personally will look to see where I'm pulling out my label maker and I'm slapping a label on someone. And I'll think, why am I doing that? And what's really funny to me is most times I'm doing that because something in them I recognize in me. And isn't it funny how that's the one thing I'm going to be prejudiced on, is what's in me? And so that's called mirroring, It's like I'm getting a mirroring effect, and so now I'm going to be prejudiced against them because it helps me see myself. And I like dissecting that. I like to see those areas where I can work on myself when I can find prejudice inside me.
And something you said that stuck with me with that whole stripping away prejudice is that labels are a mortal condition. That once we die and we're on the other side, there are no labels. We're all loved by God unconditionally. God doesn't have labels.
Exactly.
It's only a mortal thing. And I realize that these labels, these prejudices that we have, many times we think about them in terms of race and culture, but you can also have it for career fields or ages or all sorts of things that you just have this preconception about. I can think of some career fields that societally we like to denigrate, we like to pick on, and stereotypes exist for a reason, but we've got to make sure that one of the other things that I've learned is that when you talk about folks that are experiencing homelessness, that you can look at somebody and judge them as being homeless with derision, or you can look at them with compassion and say and acknowledge what they're experiencing, come out with a totally different attitude, and now it doesn't feel like prejudice, it's more compassion.
I love the idea of looking at it from a higher perspective. So part of the shaman world is the archetype of the eagle, and that is stepping back, and an eagle flies higher than any other bird, or maybe there are others that fly higher, but you know what I'm saying. They fly incredibly high. They have really good eyesight. They can see things, and they can see them from far away. They see the big picture. And I think looking at the big picture, we don't see what's going on in those people's lives. We don't know what experiences they've had. We talked a little bit about this, but if we can see things from that higher perspective, if we can look at them and their circumstance and understand that maybe that's not where they want to be either. Maybe it's not the best thing for them, but maybe that's our experience, is the opportunity to love them and to learn from that. But looking at that higher perspective and stepping back and allowing yourself to maybe see what they're going through can create some really great love and understanding.
Yeah, I'll share a vulnerable experience of my own. I have a very good way of not having prejudice towards anyone. I have this saying inside me that says I have no right to judge. And so no matter what's going on, as I start to pull up my little label maker and type up the label, I tell myself, you have no right to judge, no matter what's going on around you. And I mean no matter what. And so I'm always able to do that. But once in a while, something sneaks in there. And the other day, this is a few months ago, these kind of punk kids were being rough around little kids. And in fact, started hurting some little kids. And so I went and got involved. And let's just say I didn't use love. I scared them pretty bad, and they went running. And I looked back on it and I thought, wow, that really made me mad. And later I had to reflect even further because I couldn't let it go. I kept thinking about it. And finally I realized, because I used to be one of those punk kids. I didn't necessarily do stupid things to other kids, but I was one of those dumb punk kids. And I had to go forgive the younger dumb punk kid version of myself. And when I did, I could let it go. It's interesting though. It's interesting. Our prejudices help us understand who we really are.
I love that.
It's a really good insight.
Yep, totally. When you realize you're judging someone, that's a projection of your own, something you need to look at or work on inside of you. And just in previous conversation, I was just kind of laughing in my head. I have this visual when, we feel like we've been wronged or have prejudices and we're all trying to work through it on the earth plane. But I feel like once we get to the afterlife and, we come in contact with each other, I have this visual of all of us like coming up, high five. Yeah, good run. You were kind of an a-hole, but just kind of making light of it. Like, that was a good one. Should we do it again? Kind of, and just making light of that like we're all collective one soul. And, there's so much love and God created us out of love. It's really the earthly label experience that we're trying to combat and overcome. But really, in the end, we're all giving high fives and telling each other, you're an eagle. But it was fine. But it was a good time.
If we can go back to the eagle thing, it was made me think in the flying world, in what I did.
Former pilot.
And the role that I had in flying was it's called close air support, where if folks on the ground they're in a tough spot, and being up above that gives you an opportunity to get the big picture, to see what's going on. When you can see dangers that are approaching, you can kind of see exit routes. You can give that guidance, and it made me think that if we can exist in that space of being in a higher view, when we talk to other people, because it's all about helping each other. If we can have that perspective and we see somebody else down in the weeds, stuck in this paradigm, we can lovingly offer them another perspective, help them talk through and maybe see how this is a reflection of themselves, or maybe advise them on a way out of this prejudice that is holding them down. Maybe invite them to come up to the same level. And if you're connected to inspiration, you can find a way to do that doesn't sound preachy, because you don't want to do that either. But love can guide people through a lot of difficulties. And so living in that helps not only us, but it can help elevate all of humanity, one person at a time.
I love that idea, and I think we also can teach by example.
Yeah.
So I'm going to issue a challenge. Are you guys ready?
Ready for the challenge.
I'm going to start. What is an area in your life or a way that you can eliminate prejudice? So I'm going to start with, I'm going to work really hard to eliminate labels. And because I see labels everywhere I look, especially around here, around myself. I see how I label myself. And I think that if I can work on removing those labels from myself and the others that I come in contact with, that I can help them do the same thing. So what is a way that you can help eliminate prejudice in your own lives?
I'm going to piggyback off yours because I love that. For me, it would be eliminating labels that I put on myself of past versions of myself.
I like that.
Which I think is kind of common ground for a lot of people because, we judge ourselves off of our past or who we used to be, even though here we are evolved very different. And it's like you get one trigger, one, feeling, and you're like, oh, I'm that person again. Here's my label.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I'm going to kind of piggyback off that same thing and maybe also it's just so good. But also, I'm going to add one additional little twist to that when I recognize an irritation with somebody else, I'm going to look inward, say, okay, what is it in me that is bothering me about that?
I like that. That's what I actively do. I actively do that. If I see something that's really bothering me, somebody cutting me off in traffic or something somebody says that's kind of rude, I'll dive into me and say, why does that bother me so bad? And most times I'll find something and it's something that I've done or part of my past. And then I'll try to forgive that. Yeah.
And one of the other things that I'll mention is I find that on this journey, since starting to work on the book and being part of Living God's Light, is I've really had to work on loving and forgiving myself. And that as I do that, the amount of love and grace that I have for other people has just magnified immensely. And I think that's tied together because as I realize, I see my own perfections, my own imperfections, and I'm okay with them. Wow, I'd love to see more of my own perfections.
You are a fire pilot.
So
just kidding.
Yes. True statement. But as I see those and recognize those, and as I'm like, okay, I'm still a work in progress, and loving myself in those ways, it's so much easier to love and forgive others.
Yeah. Love goes a long way. It really does. And where it goes the furthest is inside. It does. We can share love outwardly way more by taking it inward first and allowing it out to the others. Yeah.
I'm going to take it full circle. And, when we first started, Lindsay talked about forgiveness. And I think that is a big way we can release prejudice as well, is if we forgive ourselves for our past foibles, can I call them? And
word.
for the
Say
things,
that word again?
Foibles.
Foibles.
Yeah.
He's a writer.
Google that. Since we talked about using technology wisely in our last episode, you can Google the word foibles.
You'll see a picture of Alan Smith when you do that. That's
Yeah,
great.
you might. Forgive ourselves for the things that we've done that maybe we don't think we should have. Forgive the people that are in our lives for the things that maybe they didn't do perfectly that we thought they should have. Because that forgiveness releases us. Because they're probably not even aware of the fact that we have those prejudices against them for those things. But if we forgive first, that gives us the space to see differently and to be in a better place.
Yeah.
Agreed.
All right.
Shall we wrap it up there?
Yes.
Thanks for joining us. We love having you here. If there's something that you'd love to hear about, drop us a note. Go to livinggodslight.com and do all the likes, the follows, the subscribes on all of our channels, and we will see you next time.
Thank you for joining us on the Living God's Light podcast. You can help keep the show going through getting merch at livinggodslight.com or contributing what you think the show is worth on our website or by going through Patreon. Thank you for sharing your light with the world. You are making a difference, and we love you.